Welcome back. A lot of very positive stuff has been happening in as far as ODM election strategy, more specifically nominations and so on and so forth. So we are joined now by the presidential and election manager for ODM, or more specifically Raila Odinga. This is Mr. Eliud Owalo. Yes. You see now, I wanted to put you on as a historian.
Eliud Owalo. Yes.
Eliud Owalo. Welcome.
There used to be Eliud Matthew.
Yes, there used to be, yeah.
The strategist for Kenya.
I think first, let's start from the point of knowledge or information about you,
yes.
Owalo. You've obviously been the replacement for James Ongwae, who was here
yes.
a couple of days ago.
Yes.
But tell us about yourself and where your strength lies in as far as elections or presidential campaigns or campaigns in general strategy.
Well, I come from I've got a private sector background. I've been a practicing management consultant for the past 15 years, but specializing mainly in strategy development and implementation. I've done quite a bit of this for both the public and private sectors. And before joining the Presidential Campaign Secretariat for Raila Odinga, I was a founder and Secretary General for the Friends of Raila Lobby Group. Perhaps when James Ongwae now was on the verge of leaving, I was consulted and I accepted to take this position. It's basically informed by the need to contribute towards this process, that I believe I've got a role to play in the Raila campaigns with a view to achieving the overall mandate of facilitating real change in this country through a Raila presidency.
Right.
This is actually what informed my desire to take over the position.
Nice.
Yes.
What exactly are you supposed to do when you are the presidential campaign manager? What will you do?
Well, the work of the Presidential Campaign Secretariat is to create a framework within which presidential campaigns for the candidate can be undertaken. Now, apart from formulation of the campaign strategy, you also ensure that the various organs within the campaign work in tandem. And with this respect, other than the Presidential Campaign Secretariat itself, the candidate will be running on the ticket of the ODM party. So you must work closely with the party secretariat. You must work closely with various integral stakeholders within the campaign framework, including lobby groups and other stakeholders. So on one hand, you develop the strategy, but you use other organs within the campaign framework to implement the strategy and ensure that there is synergy between all these formations within the framework of the presidential campaign, and that all the efforts are moving towards direction, they are well coordinated and aligned to the overall strategy for the presidential campaign. Nice. So basically, this is the work of the Presidential Campaign Secretariat.
So like how many staff do you have, or what kind of an outfit is it? Is it one man? Is it 10 people? What?
No, the Secretariat has got, the Raila for President Campaign Secretariat has got a team of professionals drawn from various backgrounds, various disciplines. And this basically is informed by what the campaign needs to do. So we have got strategists in various disciplines in communication, in political issues, field management issues. So all this is working in a concerted effort to deliver on the objective.
If I may ask, let me take you back, because I like what you're saying, that you have to mirror yes. What the political party he represents
yes.
to his campaign strategy
yes.
And make sure that they all run in tandem,
yes.
otherwise it's a
yes.
losing battle.
Yes. Yes.
So let me take you back to 2007 and ask, so what was the parallel? What were the ties that bound ODM in 2007 in terms of winning the election? Was it an ideology-based campaign strategy, or was it what many people would now come to say was the ethnical conspiracy of 40 against one? What was it, and did it work?
You see what happened. First of all, Kenyans know that ODM won the last elections. The ODM presidential candidate.
That is your claim.
That is not.
This is my claim, but it's also my belief.
It is disputable.
It's also my belief. But if you look back at the campaign of the ODM presidential candidate in 2007, it was basically informed by the need for real change in this country.
Right.
At that point in time, ODM came up with a manifesto on the basis of which the campaign was run. that manifesto was largely informed by the need for reforms and change. And if you remember, if you look back in retrospect, the key message that the ODM presidential candidate, more specifically Raila Odinga, delivered to the masses at that time was that one of the greatest challenges that Kenyans were facing at that point in time was weak level of infrastructure. And that campaign was anchored on infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. Having gone into a coalition government by virtue of circumstances that prevailed in this country by early 2008, the ODM side of government has largely tried to live up to its expectations. If anything, what this government has been implementing is heavily borrowed from the ODM manifesto. Now,
even that is what we're saying. I mean, the other side will not agree with you.
That's true. That's true, and I really don't want them to agree with me. But the Kenyans are there to judge.
The other side also are Kenyans.
Yeah, that's true.
Those people who don't believe or not, you are saying they are also Kenyans.
I agree with you fully and exclusively. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that what this government has been implementing is heavily borrowed from the ODM manifesto that was used for the presidential campaign in 2007. There are integral strides which the government has made, which is aligned to what the ODM manifesto spelled out at that point in time. I don't believe that the government has lived up to full expectations of Kenyans, but there are certain positive steps that have been realized with respect to implementation of the harmonized development agenda for this country since the coalition government came into being.
Do you know what we are saying? What we are saying is that when you see the roads in this country,
yes,
when you see the Thika Highway,
yes,
when you see the Eldoret Road,
yes,
that is attributable to the success of Raila. Is that what we're saying? That when you see the roads, therefore elect Raila because he's the one who did the infrastructure.
Yes and no, but let's just go back. If you look at the Thika Highway, for example, this road, was the conceptualization of this superhighway and even the designs were done when Raila was the Minister for Roads. Most of the infrastructural projects you are witnessing in this country today came into being when Raila was Minister for Energy. So Kenyans really should judge Raila on the basis of what he has actually done within the dockets within which he has served in the past. So today, of course, people are talking about Kibaki legacy in terms of infrastructure. But people are not going down into the greater details to find out how these infrastructural projects came into being. So let us go back, look at the very, very initial conceptualization of some of these projects and see who played what role within that.
You can see this guy.
He knows his job, which is brilliant.
Yeah, you're doing a good job.
Let's talk about tangibles, and I like the direction you're taking. But let's talk about tangibles in terms of if what you say is correct, that it was based on reforms and ideologies.
Yes.
Arguably, of course, the Minister for Roads is somebody on the ODM side. But talk about other ministries. And you can say there are tangible things that that come out in as far as what was a strategy put together and didn't have an opportunity, and now it has. Yes. Because even in those tangibles, there are many scandals. You talk about NHF, talk about the maize scandal, and many other issues that have come up that puts a question mark in terms of whether ODM is really a reforms party or it is just wolves in sheepskin. So talk about those other tangibles that can say yes. Look at Ministry of Medical Services. Look at other ministries that were in line in as far as our strategy is concerned, and they have one.
Ministry of Water.
Ministry of Water, for example. Yes.
Let me
because you're right, there are some key things that have taken place, but just expand a bit more.
If you talk about the maize scandal, a comprehensive investigation was carried out by PricewaterhouseCoopers. When the maize scandal came into the public domain, the Prime Minister himself led by example and went ahead and suspended key officials in his office, including the Permanent Secretary, including the Chief of Staff. Comprehensive investigations were carried out, and at the end of the day, PricewaterhouseCoopers came up with a report to the effect that there was nothing to link these two officials with the maize scandal. And it's on the basis of that they were reinstated. But the most positive aspect of it is that these officials were actually willing to step aside to facilitate comprehensive investigations into this issue. not just the mess scandal, the Prime Minister has led by example in various other aspects. You will remember that there are instances where he has directed that certain ministers step aside. But this was actually overruled by the other side of the coalition government with respect to the fact that the Prime President is the appointing authority. So I really want Kenyans to evaluate Raila's actions and performance in this coalition government based on what he has done, but also based on the prevailing political circumstances within the coalition government, where you have to consult the other party and get into a consensus, okay, before certain actions are taken.
Do you think he handled the medical services scandal properly? Do you think those are very heavy Raila presence in terms of how the entire scenario played out? And if so, how would you rate that as a weakness that perhaps will be strengthened by your by your experience and by your expertise in as far as strategy is concerned? Or
well, the medical services issue, we really need to look at what how the parastatals are governed. Yeah. There is a board of directors that governs parastatals. That board, of course, is answerable to the minister in that respective ministry. Now, unless and until things get to a situation where all the mechanisms in place, legal mechanisms in place, have been exhausted,
right.
Yeah, right. It becomes very difficult for the Prime Minister's office to come into some of these issues without being seen to be interfering in the smooth running of either parastatals on one hand or the operations of ministries is concerned. But having said that, looking specifically at the issue of the Ministry of Health, the board suspended the then CEO, okay? But the minister, having evaluated the prevailing circumstances, reinstated the CEO. Then a lot of issues came up, and this culminated in a situation where both the outgoing CEO, the previous CEO, was asked to step aside, and the minister, based on his mandate, which is enshrined in the Act, appointed somebody else from the ministry to act in that position. But within all this, appropriate investigations were also put in place to clearly determine actually the underlying issues. You see, from a technical point of view, you cannot rush into decisions which have got political connotations at the expense of determining the underlying issues that inform any prevailing situation. So, granted, the public perception may not have resonated very well with what was going on at the NHIF, but there's a framework also within which some of these issues need to be undertaken. And so long as that is seen to be done within the NHIF Act, within the powers bestowed in the minister, I believe that Kenyans need to give the NHIF and that particular ministry the chance to get to the bottom of that matter.
Balala was here on Wednesday. We interviewed here in a program called Cheche.
Yes.
And he talks exactly like Miguna.
Yes.
That you cannot trust the Prime Minister.
Yes.
That they made a deal with him when he was in ODM until he was sacked. One of the things he talked about was the establishment of a free port in Mombasa, which wasn't possible. They were betrayed about that. I asked him about the establishment of the second bulk grain handling in Mombasa, because there's a monopoly now. There was a move to build another one. The Prime Minister refused. How do you account for that those inconsistencies?
You know, you need to understand clearly how the government operates. You are talking about the establishment of a free port in Mombasa, but within whose domain does that fall? It falls within the domain of the Ministry of Transport and Communications. Now, the Minister for Transport and Communications, while I verily believe that there should be one government, the realities on the ground are different. The Minister for Transport and Communications falls within the PNU, comes from the PNU side of the of the coalition government.